of explanation is absolutely required, particularly for those people who aren't from Rhode Island. What is DataFest? Well, a couple years ago, we joined together with the Rhode Island Foundation and the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities to introduce the National Cultural Data Project here in Rhode Island. We felt it was necessary for us to understand the arts ecology in the state in a number of different ways. And it's important for me to actually change that a little bit by saying arts and culture ecology here in Rhode Island, because we have taken a much broader view of the arts and culture as we engage with, the State Arts Council, engage with the humanities and engage across the board with other things that we are, defining as part of the cultural community here in Rhode Island. So what do you do when you collect data? You find some way to introduce it to people, to make your case, to tell your story in compelling ways. And DataFest is one of the outgrowths of that. It's the opportunity to actually celebrate some of what we have learned through the Cultural Data Project and through other means about what the arts mean here in Rhode Island as far as level of activity, level of employment, level of engagement with community, a whole range of things. So last year we were lucky enough to have the cooperation of Trinity Rep to have a 3/4 of a day, half day kind of thing in cooperation not only with the partners that I've described, but also with the extraordinary City of Providence Department of Art, Cultural, and Tourism. Is Lynn McCormick still here? Wave your hand. There she is. Everyone applaud. Okay. And we had a little bit of fun with it, so that part was great. This year, as we were thinking about what could be done to talk about these numbers and statistics in an interesting way, I had a meeting with Peter and Barnaby, and they told me about this conference that they were putting together. And it seemed to me that we could get a component of that connected to the Creative Placemaking Conference, and that we could concentrate on the metrics of creative placemaking. So when we started this process, this afternoon session was going to be really the talk about metrics of creative placemaking. Lo and behold, as Barnaby and Peter, who I think have done an extraordinary job in putting this conference together, integrated metrics and evaluation and understanding how well we do what we do or how we could measure that, it sort of infused itself throughout the entire conference. So this unique portion of the 2 days at the Creative Placemaking Conference is no longer just about metrics, but it's also about programs. It's also about the kinds of things that drive our ability to tell whether we have succeeded or not. And we thought that the best way to do that was to bring two acknowledged leaders in this field to talk about this from their odd couple sort of perspective. And I don't know which one is the neat and which one is the messy, and I'm not even getting into that particular paradigm, but you've got the program side and you've got the metrics and evaluation side. And we've got Jason Shupak and Sunil Iyengar from the National Endowment for the Arts to basically take a session to introduce us to what the feds are thinking about in this particular area and to give us an opportunity to both question and challenge some of that thinking, hopefully in a very polite Rhode Island kind of way. And finally, I thought it would be useful then to listen carefully to what's been discussed, not just during this session with our friends from the National Endowment for the Arts, but also what's happened over the past couple of days, and bring 4 people up to just sort of act as a panel, sort of filter, respondents, what have you, in talking about what they have heard and how it basically touches on their particular lives. So I've got 2 researchers. I've got Ryan Stubbs from the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, who's the Director of Research there. And I've got Heather Bryant from the National Cultural Data Project. On the research side, the one side of the odd couple arrangement. And on the programmatic side, I've got Caitlin Strokos from the Alliance of Artist Communities, who represents not only a local but also a national perspective from a practitioner's perspective. And I've got Ray Watson, who is the executive director of the Mount Hope Neighborhood Center here in Providence, who's been doing some really interesting things in creative placemaking in the context of his small community. So we want to hear a little bit about that as well. I'll be peppering them with questions and also engaging you as an audience on this work. We're going to play a little fast and loose with the time, because I really do think that Jason and Sunil are going to have a lot to convey, and there's going to be a lot that we want to convey back to them or engage them in. So we're not going to worry as much about the clock except about the ending time, which will be either around 3:30 or 3:45, which will give you a nice break before United States Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island comes to address us on a variety of interesting topics. Senator Whitehouse has been a great champion of the arts here in Rhode Island, so we're delighted that he's taking time to join us this afternoon. So here we are. I don't know how to start this, but we're going to see how it goes. We're going to start with, there we go, we're going to start with the facts and figures. And this is where we start to celebrate what Rhode Island has accomplished over the past year or so, as it is told to us by the information that we've gathered from arts organizations, humanities organizations, the kinds of folks who are applying to the three partners here. And those partners are the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Rhode Island Foundation, and the director of their arts program, Mary Kim Arnold, and the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities. Now, the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, their senior staff is in Birmingham, Alabama at the moment at a humanities conference. Okay, a snapshot of data. It's important, particularly for those people who don't live here, to understand just how small and intimate Rhode Island is. As a state, we are small. We are smaller than the city of Anchorage, Alaska, and slightly larger than the city of Jacksonville, Florida. So, small, intimate arrangement. We're 50 miles north to south, 30 miles east to west, with 400 miles of shoreline. We have an incredibly exciting arts community here made up of individual artists, arts organizations, people who are doing extraordinary work in the community. And today I just wanted to take a snapshot of data that talks about programs, that talks about people, and that talks about finances. So, first thing I want to talk about is visits. This past year, 2,397,456 Rhode Islanders attended free performances and exhibits of art and culture, which is an astounding number given the fact that our population is 1 million. But, you know, we count people more than once. So still, that's a remarkable engagement with, particularly on the part of the organizations who offer free performances in our state to make the arts accessible as much as they possibly can. 1,645,000 or so paid attendees at cultural events and activities, and a total attendance of over 4 million people attending arts and cultural activities. Again, in a state that is a little bit larger than Jacksonville, Florida. So that's really extraordinary. Obviously, some of those people are visitors to our state, and I always like to bring these statistics out whenever I talk to people from the tourism community and when I talk to people from the arts community, because it's important for you to use these in making the case why tourism should be promoting you aggressively. The fact is that people who travel to attend cultural events or to do cultural things are different than your ordinary run-of-the-mill kind of traveler. They spend more on average, $623 versus $457. They are more likely to be retired. I don't exactly know what that means, except that they maybe have the time to travel. They use hotels, motels, or bed and breakfast more than typical travelers. Are more likely to spend more than $1,000, which is music to the ears of our business community. And they travel longer. They tend to stay in a place longer than people who are just coming for reasons other than cultural reasons. So these are all things to keep in mind, and a good way to position our state as a destination for the arts. You heard earlier in this conference, Lynn McCormick mentioned that our General Assembly this past year passed a law that starting December 1st will allow the sale of any original or limited edition work of art in the state to be sold exempt from state sales tax. They decided to make that move to allow the State Arts Council to work with the tourism community to brand Rhode Island as a destination for an arts buying public and also for an arts seeking public. So we're very excited about what that will mean to us in the future. Continuing on, school children and education. And this is a picture of kids getting off the bus to attend a Rhode Island Philharmonic performance at Vets Auditorium. This past year, 420,000 or more children attended arts and cultural events here in Rhode Island. That represents over 1,300 separate children's groups. And of 120,000 people participated in classes and workshops. Again, this is not an extraordinary number, except if you put this in the context of a state the size of Rhode Island. So this is a lot of activity for us. In programming, 542 live self-produced programs, 1,600 presented programs, 3,200 public performances at home, meaning these are performances of groups that are performing in their home facility. 343 public performances away from home. So these are groups that are getting out of their space and going into the community to do other kinds of things. 65 permanent exhibitions and 304 temporary exhibitions. Very impressive level of activity. Oh, and over 5,000 classes and workshops. New works. This is the one that really blows me away. So, again, remember, I keep coming back, Rhode Island, you can drive anywhere in less than an hour. 138 world premieres, according to the responses we got through the Cultural Data Project. That's a really impressive number. 6 national premieres, 106 local premieres, 107 new works commissioned, and 62 workshops or readings of new work. That speaks to a community that is really engaged with making new things happen in this state. So that's an exciting report out. And then a couple of slides on jobs. Obligatory, but nevertheless important. For artists, the Cultural Data Project tells us that if you count actual people and not full-time equivalents, I have done both on this slide. There are over 2,000 artists who were employed in the state of Rhode Island this past year. If you factor just FTEs, it's probably around close to 500. On the program side, over 1,200 people are engaged as on the program side, and that includes about 600 or so part-time employees, but 303 full-time employees in program. And on the admin side, about 484 people who are employed on that level. Total jobs, if you combined all those numbers, you've got over 3,800 people employed in the arts. Now, this is just in the nonprofit sector in our state. If you look beyond the nonprofit sector to what Americans for the Arts reports on in its Creative Industries Report, District of Columbia, Rhode Island compares really well with the rest of the country. In total arts-related jobs, over 13,000. Arts-related jobs per 1,000 state residents, about 12.7, which is the 6th highest in the country. And the percentage of all jobs in the state that are arts-related, 2.48%, which is the 3rd highest in the nation. And if you look at the number of businesses, you've got over 3,200 arts-related businesses in the state, with the percentage of all businesses in Rhode Island that are arts-related being about 4.7%, which is the 13th highest in the country. Again, a lot of activity happening in a very small area. And then just a couple slides on revenue, and then we'll get to the NEA show. More than half of the revenue raised by arts organizations, again, we're back in the nonprofit realm, is earned revenue. So 55% is earned revenue. In expenses, close to 80% is spent on programs, 16% on general and administrative, and about 6% for fundraising. Contributed revenue, now, because we are partners not only with the Rhode Island Foundation but also the Humanities Council, some of these numbers are influenced by the fact that there are some libraries involved here. So you've got a 32% figure for government support. A lot of that comes from libraries in communities throughout the state that are supported both by the state and local government. But there's still an impressive number of over $8.7 million in contributions from individuals, 2.7 from corporations, and over $9 million from foundations. And if you look at the number of contributors, an astonishing number from individuals, and this probably mirrors a lot of what's happening around the rest of the country, but still 75,000 contributions from individuals, over 885 directly from board members of arts organizations and cultural organizations. And then finally, my favorite slide here is the amount of payroll tax revenue that's generated by all of this activity. The bottom line is over $3 million in tax revenue generated by, in payroll tax revenue, generated by all this arts and cultural activity, which frankly is a little more, almost like 40% more, going back into the state coffers than is being contributed through the State Arts Council and other entities. So I think we can, from all of this, make the case that the arts are not only an important part of the state's economy, and you'll notice that I haven't gotten into a discussion about the multiplier effect and all of those kinds of things. I really prefer to focus on the actual direct economic activity that's happening through the arts. We all know that restaurants are doing well and parking lots are doing well and all of that, and we are just now starting to understand how we can best communicate those economic impacts to the people who decide on their support for the arts.